Hello, UK Crime Book Club. I feel like I'm always laughing when we start. I'm always having such a good time before we go live. I completely forget that we're about to go live, and I should compose myself. It's good job I'm not a newsreader. So, hello, Jane Isaac. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Introduce yourself and show off some of those gorgeous books behind you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. So I've written 10 books now. Yeah, my 10th book came out in June this year. I've been writing crime fiction for the last 11 years. So quite a long time. I don't think all my books can sort of fit in the camera, but here's the view of the ones that can. I tend to write mainly detective fiction. I have written 3 different detective series, and there is a reason for that, which I'm sure we'll talk about during the interview.
You can bring that up, because I was going to ask you before we went live if there was something that I can ask you. So I think we're on the same page with that. You can bring it up if you want to.
Do you want me to talk about that now, yeah?
No, introduce your books first, and then you can tell us.
3 books in the D.I. Will Jackman series, which is based in Stratford-upon-Avon. 3 books in the DC Beth Chamberlain series, which is a family liaison officer based in Northamptonshire. And then I've also written 3 books in the DCI Helen Lavery series, and there will be a 4th DCI Helen Lavery book in February of next year. This year, I also wrote a standalone crime thriller, One Good Lie, which was published in June. And I've just finished the second one in that contract, a second standalone thriller, which will be published next June.
I'm really excited because I'm reading One Good Lie. I'm almost there. And I'm really excited to know you're doing a second standalone.
Oh, thank you. Are you enjoying?
I really am.
Oh, good. Good. Actually, I was really nervous about that one because it was my first standalone book, and I actually didn't know if I could do it. I was quite worried that I wouldn't be able to achieve it, you know, because I've always written police procedurals. So
one of my questions was how different was it to literally contain a story within one book when you're used to being able to kind of spread some bits out, some parts of relationships and characters and character development. It must be completely different to write a standalone than a series.
It is completely. I mean, it is. I mean, if I'm honest, I much prefer the series because I absolutely get to know my characters so well, and they almost become part of you. They get under your skin, and they almost become real, which can be quite difficult at times because. First of all, you don't want to let them go at the end, and sometimes you have to let characters go. That's the end of their story. But often with a series, there's more you can do with them. So it's lovely to be able to write more books with them. But also it can be quite challenging to get to know them really well. I mean, I know with my D.I. Will Jackman series, he's a guy and I'm a woman writing through the eyes of a male lead character. And I know it's been done really well by lots of other authors over the years. But I found that a huge challenge, a really big challenge. I mean, at the time I'd written 2 Helen Lavery books when I went into the Will Jackman series. So I knew that I could put a book together, although I always worry every time I start a new one. It was more getting Will right, getting under his skin and actually becoming him. Because if my characters aren't real to me, they're not going to be real to my readers. And I have 2 brothers. I've been married for 20 odd years. I've got a strong relationship with my dad. And I thought, I can do this. I can write through the eyes of a man.
Easier.
Oh my God, it's so hard. I mean, I've read that book, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. But actually getting under the skin of a character and writing and almost becoming a man, I found it really difficult. And I remember I used to write in the corner of my front room in those days, and my daughter would be playing on the floor. My husband would be either sitting in the chair reading or watching the television. And having written 2 books through the eyes of a female lead character, she was always at the back of my mind. And I was about halfway through the first Will book, and I remember turning to my husband and saying, would Will really do that? Would he really do that? Because Helen wouldn't do that. And I think that's when I really thought I got him then. I just kind of like, okay, he's very different, but, and it was great, actually. I really enjoyed the challenge.
We haven't mentioned the competition.
Oh, no. Okay. So for anyone that's watching, I'm giving away a signed copy of A Deathly Silence. I don't know You can see it. Yeah, there we go. Which I'm happy to sign and dedicate to, and we'll pick one at random afterwards.
Brilliant, thank you. So there was something that we were both thinking about, but I'm going to let you bring it up.
And what was that?
At the start of the interview, you were saying that there was. Do you remember?
Oh right, yeah, okay. So
cool.
why have I written different series? Is that okay? Well, hi, somebody's put a comment in. Hi, thanks for joining us.
I can see it on my see if I can see it on my phone to see who the comments from. But hello, whoever that is. Hi.
Okay, so what happened was I wrote my first 2 Helen Lavery books, and I was quite prepared to write another, but I got a little bit of itchy feet, really. I just didn't want to fall into a sort of a kind of formulaic thing of writing another novel. I wanted to do something different. So I decided that somebody just put best research rabbit hole you've been down. Oh, I can tell you a nice story about research in a minute.
This is Caroline Maston. Hi, Caroline.
Oh, is it? Oh, hi, Caroline. Hi. Yeah, I wanted to do something different, and that's really how the Will Jackman series came about. It was banter between my husband and I. He was like, I don't know if you could write through the eyes of a male lead character. And he was only joking, but that's really how the idea for Will Jackman came. So I put the whole Helen series on hold to write a Will Jackman book. And I was only going to write one to see if I could do it as a standalone. But I liked the character, as we were saying about character.
Yeah.
I decided to write 2 more in the Will Jackman series, and I really enjoyed working with him. And the most extraordinary thing was some of the book bloggers, they swoon over him, Will Jackman, and he's like a figment of my imagination. So that was kind of strange, really.
It must be a very strange thing.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of odd. But I wrote three books in his series. And then I got itchy feet again because I just want to keep things fresh and interesting for my readers. And over the years, things change too. So I am Midlands based, whoever that is. I'm based in Northamptonshire.
Hi, Helen.
Oh, hi, Helen. I'm based in Northamptonshire. So yeah. And my Beth Chamberlain series is based in Northamptonshire as well. But that's why I decided to write something completely different. And that's how I came up with the role of the family liaison officer, because that's such an interesting role in the police. Yeah. It's a detective role, but it's also they also do a lot of work with families. So they actually family liaison officers spend a lot of time with families after a major trauma, so a murder or during a kidnapping. And what most people don't realize is that they're supporting the family. That's what their main job is, but they're also silently investigating the family as well, because most people are killed by somebody close to them, somebody they know. So they're watching for any quirks, anything odd that might be said, that kind of thing. And that for a crime writer is just such an amazing role to exploit. So and that's when I came up with Beth Chamberlain, because I just wanted to investigate that role and see what I could do with a family liaison officer, which was great.
So that's really interesting, because what I wanted to ask you was, you've got, and I've made a note because I wouldn't remember all of the acronyms. So DCI, DI, and a DC.
Yeah.
But was it more the role that you went with rather than the rank?
No, I went for the right role for the series. So how difficult? Hi, Sandra. Ooh. I will talk about how difficult it is to get an agent.
I don't know why that suddenly popped up. But hi, Sandra.
Thanks for joining us.
I will talk about that in a little while between the two of us, don't we, Jane?
Yeah, we'll get there.
That's a nice one to
have. Sorry, what was the question?
So I asked about the rank, whether the rank came first or whether it was the character?
Right. Well, I think DCI Helen Lavery, she's so most senior investigating ranks are DCI and above, although you do get some DIs these days so that do the role. So that's why she was a DCI from the beginning. I wanted to write through somebody heading the investigation, and that's why DCI Helen Lavery is a detective chief inspector, and that's why Jackman is a detective inspector, because when I wrote his series, the police were just starting to use inspectors as SIOs as well.
Yeah.
More delegation, if you like. But even then, they're still overseen by a DCI, if you like, or a superintendent. But the DC Beth Chamberlain was because the family liaison officer can be a constable or a sergeant role. And also it gives you a lot more to do with them, because in the police, most of these jobs that we read about in books, like the interviewing and going out to scenes and all that kind of thing, are done by constables, detective constables. They're not done by DCIs and superintendents and that kind of thing. But as crime writers, what we do is we give them, we use smaller characters. So in a normal murder investigation, you have loads and loads and loads of officers drafted in from all over. You have a senior investigator, which is usually a DI or DCI, sitting behind a desk giving instructions. That would be really boring in a novel. Yeah. Too many characters. So what we do is we just pick sort of two main characters, if you like, or one main character and a sidekick, and then two other characters. And we give them a lot more to do, which is why you find Morse going out, walking around Oxford and interviewing people, which in reality wouldn't happen. But in fiction, we have to do that because it gives them, you know, it tells the story and just makes it more interesting, really.
I do like it when higher ups go out on a walkabout and then it's used as a, well, I always enjoyed that, so I've carried it on. Because it is, you know, it's a good enough excuse when you're reading a book. That's fine. You know, you can quite believe that might be possible, which is really nice. Sandra's question: how difficult was it for you to get an agent and a publisher?
I found that incredibly difficult. And to be fair, I never expected to be published. I wrote my first book to see if I could do it. I actually didn't know if I could write 80 to 90,000 words, which is what the average crime novel is, make it all hang together, make it page turning, make it a thriller, and interesting characters and all the rest of it. I didn't know if I could do it. So I wrote my first book for me. It took me 18 months to complete it. And I did a creative writing course. So I was just finishing it at the end, and it was my tutor that thought I should do something with it and submit it. And I did get an agent reasonably quickly, which was shocking for me because I didn't know what to do. It made me really frightened me. But lovely, of course. But I did a lot of work on my first book because An Unfamiliar Murder was my first book, and it was written predominantly as a psychological thriller. And he saw the potential for a series. So we brought out the lead character's role and made it the first in the DCI Helen Lavery series. And he submitted it to the big publishing houses, the HarperCollins, the Orions, the Penguins of this world. And we had amazing feedback, lovely feedback, but nobody signed the novel. And this was way back in 2010. Obviously, I had a happy ending because the book, we did find a publisher. We found an independent publisher with my first book. But it just shows the roller coaster ride of a novelist. It is very much up and down. You're only as good as your last book. And it can be very difficult to find an agent and a publisher. The only advice I can really give is to keep trying. Make the book, make your novel the best it could possibly be. Have it pre-read and all the rest of it, do all the edits you can do on it before you start submitting, and also go to literary festivals and meet agents and publishers, because it's good to get to know the people in the business, and who knows, they might remember your name when they're reading your novel.
And that's always good, because some of it is just luck. It's getting it on the right person's desk at the right time.
Absolutely, very much so.
Frustrating.
It is ever so frustrating, and I mean, even when you're a published author, I mean, I've worked with 4 different publishers now, and my books last year went out on submission because my standalones were different to the other stuff. So I was being read and rejected by publishers last year, and which happens to published authors. You know, when somebody comes up and says, I've signed a 3-book deal with so-and-so, and it's different to their other publisher, that means that they've been out on submission with lots of people. You know, it doesn't. So it's kind of it is a roller coaster ride, and it's something that happens a lot. So you do kind of have to get used to rejection. You have to develop a bit of a crocodile skin, which isn't easy because most of us writers are quite sensitive, so it can be quite tricky.
I would imagine, We've got a few more questions on the stream. I'm just trying to look who they're from. Leslie Lloyd says hello.
Hi, Leslie.
Kaz has gone right in with one of our favourite questions. Now, Anne Coates is an author in the group.
Yeah, I know Anne.
She's fantastic.
She's a friend of mine, yeah.
Oh, good. So you know Hannah Weybridge.
Yes, I know Hannah Weybridge, yes.
So Anne told us the story about holding a knife up to her own throat while she was trying out a scene. Have you ever acted out a scene?
Uh-huh.
So have you ever acted out a scene yourself to make sure it works?
I'm sure I have. I can't think of actual example of it, but I do have a humorous research story. I mean, I do loads and loads and loads of research, but I do have a funny research story that I can share with you, which is for the last book, not this book that was published in June, the one that was published last year, Hush Little Baby. I had a body buried in concrete. Now, I discovered this really interesting phenomenon that concrete has...
really looking forward to where this is going.
Well, concrete has preserving properties. So the average body, when it's buried in the ground, breaks down depending on conditions within 6 months. But in concrete, they can last for years. I mean, they can be preserved for years. So my body is buried in concrete for 15 years. It becomes a cold case. And I needed to know what my body was going to look like. And I did loads of research online, but I couldn't find anyone that would help me with how it would look now, and also confirm my research that it would preserve the body. Yeah. So I tried all my usual contacts. I even spoke to the lady that advises on silent witness, would you believe, but it's not her area of expertise. And I really struggled to get someone to help me. So I decided to do my own experiment just to make sure that my research played out, because I would hate to write a book where the research isn't right. So what I decided to do was, my daughter's a big foodie. She's doing food science at uni now. And she was cooking a pig shoulder, or she was planning to cook a pig shoulder for Sunday lunch. Now you can see where this is going now, can't you?
I can,
So the pig shoulder was on the kitchen surface. And I thought, do you know what? That would be a really good experiment. So with the help of my husband, I buried this pig's shoulder in concrete in a bucket in my garden, put a pot plant on top of it, knew I'd sealed it because my dogs weren't interested and there were no flies around it. Neighbours thought it was hilarious. And we left it there for almost a year. I'd just about finished the book. We were going into edits when we decided to open it up. And it was a really hot bank holiday weekend. We were having a family day at home. And my neighbours were having barbecues with their families and friends in their gardens around. And I said to my husband, we could break up that concrete now. I mean, I'm coming up for edits. I need to know that this is going to work, because the whole book hinges on this. So we get the sledgehammer out and he breaks into the concrete. And for the first 10 seconds, we are transfixed. I mean, it looks exactly the same. The meat is pink, the skin is white. This pig's shoulder hasn't deteriorated at all for the first 10 seconds. And then the smell is putrid. It hits you. What I didn't know was, as soon as oxygen hits the piece of meat, it goes into rapid degeneration. So the smell is disgusting. And my neighbours are having barbecues with their friends and families in the gardens around. So we're panicking, trying to get rid of this smell. My husband's trying to get rid of the concrete. And I'm thinking, what do I do with this pig's shoulder? I have no idea. So I wrapped it in 2 carrier bags and I put it in my freezer, because I thought, well, frozen meat doesn't smell, right? So we cleared up. We came in and had showers, and I thought, I can still smell that pig. But I thought the smell was in my nose. So I went to bed and I got up the next day, went downstairs, and we had friends coming for brunch. And it came out to beat me, this smell. It was disgusting. So half an hour before our friends were coming for brunch, my husband is driving out of the village with a carrier bag hanging outside the car with this pig shoulder in it, because it smells too rotten to put it in the car. And he went up to a old airfield near us and buried it there. And I'm emptying the freezer, because in case the smell has ruined any of the food in there. So needless to say, we had brunch in the garden that day, takeaway. But my experiment worked. I mean, it was preserved.
How did that change the book, though? It
did. Well, it showed that my research played out, but also I did find a former crime scene manager, just as we were going. to tell me exactly what it would look like after 15 years. And she actually sent me some photographs. And it's literally one line in the book, but at least I could give my readers a flavour of what it was look like. My books aren't graphically violent or anything, but they're more psychological. But I do like the research to be, on the knuckle if I can.
I mean, that is some commitment to the research.
It was hilarious, I've got to say.
I've managed to now disable this new feature that I didn't know Be Live had,
right.
which was putting a countdown, putting the questions on the screen. So let me look for Sandra's question. And she said, thanks for answering her earlier question. And how important is the location of your books? So explain where your books are all set.
Okay, so my DCI Head and Lavery series was the first series that I wrote, and it's it's based in a fictional town in the Midlands. And the reason I did that, I thought I'd be clever and I'd be able to move things around and put them where I wanted them. But I did use local landmarks, but I renamed them. But you can't pull the wool over the eyes of readers. Local people were contacting me saying, that's so-and-so, isn't it? And that's so-and-so, isn't it? So they kind of guess really where it was, but it's in a fictional place. After that, I decided that I wanted to go with a real setting, but that presents huge challenges as well, because you have to get that exactly right. Yeah. I mean, Will Jackman and Stratford upon Avon. I went to Stratford so many times for research. I mean, that was a hardship, I've got to say. We had so many family holidays in Stratford. It has my husband's favourite Thai restaurant, my daughter's favourite shops. But it was lovely to get to know it really, really well. And I remember taking my dogs over there once for a research mission. And I was looking for a deposition site for a body. And I found this gorgeous little village called Clifford Chambers, just outside Stratford. And I'm walking my dog around, and of course everybody's saying, "Well, you're not from here, are you? Who are you?" So I'm sort of saying, "Well, I'm researching for a book," and the local people were so helpful. They were like, I said, "I'm looking for somewhere to put a body," and they were like, "Oh, try the old water tanks in the wood at the top of the hill, or there's some old barns back over so-and-so's field." They were absolutely brilliant. They were so helpful. So yeah, Stratford upon Avon was my Will Jackman books, which was fabulous, and I got to know Stratford so well. I could live there. It's so beautiful. And then my DC Beth Chamberlain series, I set it in my home county of Northamptonshire, because it made me reconnect with where I live and how beautiful it is. I mean, I'm sort of about 15, 20 minutes from Althorpe. That's about the only thing people know about Northamptonshire is where Princess Diana was born. But our countryside is beautiful. And it was so nice to actually visit things that were on my doorstep, to decide on where I was going to put things and stuff. I mean, my detective lives in the next village to me. So that was really easy. So that was really, really nice.
I believe this might be Caroline Maston, but I'm not sure. Has asked, as your husband is a serving detective, does that help to understand the police procedure? Now, that is the question I was going to ask you before we went live, to check you're okay with it.
I'm fine with that, yeah.
And then I realised I found that out on your Amazon page, so...
yeah. So honestly, it helps tremendously. Tremendously. Yeah, I mean, I'm in awe of people who can write police procedurals without having, a close contact in the police, because it's so tricky. There are so many rules and regulations, and whilst my books aren't, I would say they're not bogged down in police procedure, I do try and keep things as authentic as I can. My husband has never worked on the homicide team, but he does put me in contact with so many interesting people, and I've spent the day with the gun squad. I've been so lucky. I've spent an afternoon with a family liaison officer. I've just been incredibly fortunate, actually. And if I do have a research question, usually he can find somebody that can help me with it. So, and he's also very good at bouncing ideas off, because obviously he knows the law, he knows police work. So he can often tell me whether something will work or not. And he's also my first reader.
Excellent. I didn't remember that.
But that can cause arguments, I've got to say. Because for some reason I have to print the book out for him, and he just likes to sit in the same room as me, and I just watch his foot twitch or something, and I'm like, what's wrong? What's the matter? But yeah, I mean, he's brilliant. He's a very harsh critic, but that's what you need in your early drafts.
Absolutely. But I don't think I could sit in the same room. I'd be infuriating.
It does.
I would
It drives
be
you
the
mad.
most annoying part.
And he has a little pencil.
Them.
He has a little pencil. For some reason, he likes to write on the side in a little pencil if he doesn't like something or he's not sure about something. And as soon as I see him get that pencil out, I'm like, what's wrong?
Does he not get nervous about concrete when he gets his pencil out and you
look at him? You ought
to. Somebody has asked, do you watch a lot of crime on TV? And if so, does this help with your writing? Now, I've learned in the last couple of years, being a member of the book club before I was an admin, so many things that I thought were accurate are absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
I've grown up watching certain, misconceptions.
The big problem being married to a detective, the big problem I have when we're watching crime dramas on television, he gets really uppity when things aren't done properly. I mean, he'll let a few things go, but some things are so far out of, and I just keep saying it's fiction, as long as it's believable for people. But yeah, we watch a lot of Scandi crime dramas, because they tend to be, as far as he's concerned, more accurate, the Scandi ones. But when we do watch, I mean, we love Beck. I don't know if you've ever seen Beck, but that's a Scandi one. We love that. But and I watch an awful lot. But there are certain ones he won't watch with me because he said they're too far off police procedurals. So the police procedure is too far off, and it just aggravates him.
We had an author, one of my friends, Andy Barrett, who was on, and he gets irate.
Really?
He will not watch things. It's really funny though, and he's quite happy that he's quite happy for us to just giggle at him, but he just goes mad. He's a CSI, so he's very likes procedure. It's quite funny.
I think
it's a shame he's not watching. He would be ranting in the comments right now.
I think it's a detective thing, because, like I say, with my husband, he really gets quite cross with it, and he's like, I'm not watching it anymore now because it's too far off. They'd never do that. I'm like, but it's good. It's gripping. It's crime fiction.
I know this question is from Kaz. If you are Midlands based, do you like oatcakes? That's got to be Kaz.
Hi, Kaz. Right. Hi. No, I don't.
Absolutely right.
I don't. I'm afraid. I'm so sorry. I don't like oatcakes.
Okay, we'll move on. I'm yet to. She's going to take me at some point to eat things. So, Aggie, hi Aggie, asked, when you've been writing D.I. Will Jackman, did you imagine him looking like a man you know in real life, for example, your husband? That's a good question, Maggie.
Well, Will Jackman was made up of...
Aggie, sorry, not Maggie.
I mean, my husband is dark, but he's not particularly, not particularly... Will Jackman is tall and very dark. My husband is dark, but he's not that tall. So, no, I didn't imagine my husband when I was writing him. The funny thing about Will Jackman was, and this wasn't intentional, but a lot of people imagined him to look like Hugh Jackman. Because he's tall and dark.
I've got to say, when I read Will Jackman, I thought, I wonder if that's where the surname came from. Because automatically your mind goes to Hugh Jackman. It just does.
Well, and I know it wasn't intentional, but it seems to have done the series a lot of good, because because he's tall and dark as well. Then I think, because originally he was Jackson, but there was another Jackson out there, another D.I. Jackson. So that's why I changed him to Jackman, but I didn't actually make the connection at the time. But no, he's not my husband. But there is a character in my first book, An Unfamiliar Murder, Anna's boyfriend, Ross. He has bikes, he loads of cycles, and he's got bike parts all over his lounge, which is what my husband would do if I didn't live with him. He'd have bike parts all over his lounge. And when people read my first book, loads of people, like half the Northamptonshire Police Force, read my first book, and they were like, that's your husband, isn't that? We know who that is. So I suppose bits of Ross must have been based on him.
Yeah, he must have seeped in.
Yeah.
It would be impossible for people to not have any traits of anybody that you know.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah.
I want to talk about One Good Lie.
Okay.
Ruby and Sophie. Really, a really lovely relationship, but obviously fraught with lots of different things as well.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult is that kind of relationship to write? I'm trying to be careful not to
give too much away. I know it's a tricky one, actually.
So I'll hand it over to you instead.
Thanks. I found that really, I mean, I found writing a standalone really hard anyway, because it's more about the people. I mean, you can't sort of fall back on the police investigation and the police team and police work. So it is more about the people. And I found it incredibly difficult to write, because obviously they're very close, but there's lots of murdered 10 months before the book starts, and lots of different issues there. And Sophie was the one that introduced her mother to the convicted murderer, who new evidence comes to light to cast doubt over whether he is the murderer or not. And then the two sisters start to, or certainly one of the sisters, Ruby, starts to think, well, is somebody else the murderer? And she starts to look into things. And it causes a rift between the two of them. And I found that incredibly difficult, because it's actually kind of micromanaged almost. You're getting right inside both their heads, and it's quite hard to do. Hopefully I've achieved it. Oh, bless you. But it was, I did find it difficult. It took a long time.
So when, obviously you've done 10 books now, when you started out, what do you think you've learned from writing the first one that has helped you moving along? Does it ever, tell me it does, does it ever get any easier? Give me some, oh no. There's that author face again. Whenever we ask this question, that's the face that we get.
I'm so sorry. I think the thing is, I think we're all very sensitive, but we're also we're perfectionists. So we want every book to be better than the last, which means that you feel the pressure every time you write a new book, especially if it's something different, like if it's not your normal series, or it's a standalone or something like that. You don't want to let your readers down. Every single one almost has to wring you out to dry. And I know that sounds it's not what you want to hear. You want to hear that you just sit there like Angela Lansbury, Murder, She Wrote, and just type them all out. And I wish I could say that was the case for me. And perhaps it is for some other people. I don't know. But no, every single one really, really takes me to the limit. And I think we were talking beforehand, weren't we? And I said, by the time my books are published, by the time the book, that I'm writing is published, I loathe them. I can't bear to look at them. And it's because I've read them so many times and worked so hard on so many different twists and turns that I've done them. I can't, there's nothing more I can do with them, I think. So I wish I could be really positive and say yes, but I can't, sorry.
That's fine. But
it just shows that the work that you're putting into whatever you're working on is the right thing to do.
Well, let's hope so. Otherwise, I'll be borrowing the concrete. I do have to ask, now you've mentioned Jessica Fletcher, do you have a favourite fictional detective, TV or otherwise?
Or it changes so much. That's the trouble. Whatever I watch, it just tends to change. That's the thing. I mean, I loved the original Prime Suspect. I loved all of that. I just Linda LaPlante stuff. I just absolutely loved that. But then, I love Beck. I think he's an amazing detective.
I need to watch this.
It's fun. Well, read the books. There's a whole load of books on it as well. But it is, So I have loads, and it's really hard to narrow it down to one. I mean, I love Luther because he's off the wall completely. So there's so many different ones, and I like them for different reasons as well.
I do have a bit of a serious Jessica Fletcher obsession.
Do you?
To the point that I realised that I've stolen some of it, not today, but I realised there was a picture of me on I'd gone out for a meal with my friend for our joint birthdays, and the top that I was wearing was this kind of thing with a bow at the neck, and it was absolutely the same thing that Jessica Fletcher wears.
That's so funny.
Susan Handley is the author who occasionally sends me pictures of JB Fletcher because she just thinks it's hilarious.
That's brilliant. I love that.
I'm the most ridiculous person you'll ever meet.
No, but I think that's lovely because you're getting in character, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I'm getting the grey as well. So Tony
Can't see it.
Millington says evening, and he's laughing at poetic license.
Poetic
So, but
license.
you do. I mean, this factual, completely factual, would be so dull.
I mean, it would be dull. And that goes back to really what we were talking about earlier. You know, if you did it how the police do it, you know, for detective
By the
novels,
book, it would
I
be
mean,
rubbish.
it would be confusing. There would be too many characters and it would be boring because a lot of police work is actually quite mundane and boring. So to make it exciting and to make it into a thriller, then we do have to hone down on, you know, just concentrate on just a few characters. So, you know, there is poetic license in some places. But I think most of us try really, really hard with our research to make sure that, you know, like I had one lady that was stabbed in the neck in one of my books. But I found out that you can actually stab yourself in the neck. And you can actually kill yourself by doing it. It has happened, and it has come up in some legal cases as to whether, because it's just one stab wound, whereas when most people are stabbed, they're stabbed loads of times because the killer goes into a frenzy. So one stab wound is always a little bit suspect. So that was great for me because I could exploit that in my book. So I think I did so much research just to make sure that I was right. So I think we do loads and loads of research behind the scenes. Some of it gets into the book, some of it doesn't. Some of it just informs the story. But there has to be a little bit of license with crime fiction, because I think if it was like a doco, it wouldn't be as interesting or as funny or as, you know, as exciting.
Yeah. Tell us about Evil Intent. Is that one finished and done and gone now, or are you still working on it?
Okay, Evil Intent we've just gone through proofing, so that comes out in February, and that is I haven't done many serial killer books. I've done obviously it's all murder and mayhem. All my books are murder and mayhem, but I haven't actually done many serial killers. I think I've only done one other proper serial killer. And not to say that there isn't lots of bodies killed in my books, but an intentional serial killer. So Evil Intent was really exciting for me because he is a serial killer, and that was a great book. I mean, it stretches Helen Avery to the limit because some old demons come back for her as well that she has to deal with throughout the book. I'm not sure how much I can say about it because it's going to give an awful lot away.
We know.
But it's a serial killer thriller basically. And it comes out 1st of February. It's up for pre-order now if anybody's interested.
1st of February next year. It's my birthday.
Yeah. I should get the cover. I've got the cover, but I should be able to do a cover reveal soon.
Excellent. Let me know when you can, and we'll give you permission to pop it into the book.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
You're very welcome. I look forward to that.
Thank you.
We've got Leslie Lloyd. Sam, you don't have time to watch TV. You need to be writing. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Nice. Aggie's asking, how do you relax and unwind after finishing the book, and how long will it take you to start writing the next book?
Well, I do need a little bit of time in between books just to sort of come down really, and to also let some of my characters, obviously with a standalone you have to let them go anyway because you're not going to write another one. With detective, even if you're going to write another one in that series, there are other characters in the book that you have to let go. I decided right from the very beginning that I would write detective fiction with a psychological crossover. So all my books are written through the eyes of a lead detective character, but they're also written through the eyes of somebody close to the victim. So we see the investigation unfold from both sides, and then it comes together at the end. So there's always characters that I've got to know really well that I have to let go, and it's almost like a grieving process. I just have to let it wash through me and let it go before I can really concentrate properly on something new. So I just need a little bit of time to come down after finishing the first draft, definitely. I mean, I finish the first draft and then usually 2 or 3 months later we go into edits, and then proofing and all the rest of it. And edits, you revisit it a lot then, but I think I've probably let a lot of it go by then, you know, that's inside me, unless it's a big structural edit. Generally I've kind of come down a bit then, and I can start to maybe think about my next book.
Somebody has asked. Now, Leslie Lloyd saying she got irate with nursing programs. That was it. obviously moving on from
Is that because they're not accurate? Nursing, yeah.
Yeah,
I
drives them
understand that.
insane. Absolutely drives them insane. The question that somebody had asked, and I think it was Kaz, was, can you tell us about the last scene that you've written without giving anything away?
Oh gosh, the last scene I wrote. Oh, that's a tough one because it was at the end of my standalone, which is coming out next June. It's called The Crash, but the publishers will probably change the title. They often do. It's about a plane crash where a businessman and the pilot are on board, and only the pilot's body are found, and we follow the story through the two wives that are left afterwards, and it becomes a mystery which they start to investigate. And the last scene I wrote was the denouement, so I can't really tell you too much, but it was quite exciting for me to write. It was quite because I'd already written the epilogue and everything, and I'd already written the denouement once, but I decided to change it slightly, and I went back and did it again. So yes, that was my last, but I can't tell you much because it'll give it away.
Fair
Sorry.
It's one of those questions that can go either way.
Yes, yeah.
It is. You've just mentioned titles. So when it comes to covers and titles, A, how much say do you have? B, do they change? The titles in particular, have they changed from a working title, or have they all stayed?
Yeah, they do. I mean, it depends on which publisher I've worked with, because I've worked with 4 different publishers now. The publisher that I'm working with at the moment, they generally tend to change the titles, and they decide on the cover art, and you have very little input. With my first book, with my American publisher, I had loads of input. My first book that came out in the States. I don't know if I mentioned that. I had loads of input, which was lovely. And they kept my title, An Unfamiliar Murder, and they also asked me what I wanted on the cover. And there was a scene in the book where Anna goes to meet somebody by the entrance to some tunnels, and in a red coat. And that's what I wanted on the cover. But I've got the tunnels near me, and I had to take loads of photographs of them because the cover artist was in the States. And they had to find a location in the States that emulated these same tunnels and make it look the same. And they actually went out on location, and they managed to find, I mean, it's amazing the job that they did. It's absolutely, I don't know if I haven't got it on my desk here to show you, but I'm just looking to see if I've got a copy of it here. Oh yeah, I have, look. So, because I've had to reread it because I've written others in the series, but this was the cover. But cover art goes in fashions. So this book is on 3rd edition now. And I'll show you what it looks like now, because we've gone a lot more domestic with covers. That's what it looks like now. You can see it there. So how different is that?
That's very, very different, completely different style.
I know, but it's just that different years have different fashions for cover art. But with One Good Lie, I had absolutely no input on the cover. That was, they said, this is a cover for your new book.
Love that cover.
Yeah, you do. Oh, good. I'm glad that you like it.
I really do.
When it first came,
absolutely pick that up. Well, I did, but I would absolutely pick that up.
Oh, that's interesting. When it first came through, I thought, oh, is that a proper? But I think it is quite a good depiction of the story, isn't it? Yeah, so that's quite good. With some of the other ones, with one of my publishers, the cover artist designed 6 mock-ups for them based on the story, and they only get a 3 to 4 page overview of the story, and they used to send them to me, and they'd say, we really like number 2, and I would say, oh, I think number 4 really reflects the story, and they'd say, we really like number 2, and we'd have number 2. So it's not, I don't think it's lip service, really.
I think if you absolutely hated it, I'd hope that they would take that on board. But if you kind of like something that you're indifferent... I mean,
we did have one that was, they put a woman on the seaside, and the story was based in a landlocked, in Northamptonshire, which is landlocked.
Right.
So my agent straight away picked that up and said, excuse me, but Northamptonshire's landlocked, you can't have that. Really so they did change that one. But generally, it's how it is, they decide. Because they have more commercial knowledge than I do. I mean, I have, with An Unfamiliar Murder, my first publisher, I mean, this is 2012. They folded in 2016, so I got my rights back. So I actually, that cover that I showed you, that domestic cover, I actually self-published that again because I got my rights back, and I chose that cover, which I was really proud of. But I found it incredibly difficult to do because it's quite hard to choose a really good cover for a book. It's quite difficult. And I take my hat off to all the self-published writers out there, because it is a difficult thing to do.
I think one thing with titles and covers, I think it's always part of the fun. If you pick up a book and you're reading it and then you figure out why the title and why the cover are so important to the story.
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah. I think and editors can be really, really good at that. They're quite good with their taglines and their covers and things. But it's not unknown for an author not to like their covers. I mean, I would hope most of the time they do, but I've got used to the fact now that, put my trust in the publisher and hope that they know best, basically.
Yeah, it must be hard though, but I suppose that gets easier as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, One Good Lie was called It Was You. That was my title, my working title for One Good Lie.
Which, okay, I can see that, because that's part of the prologue.
Yes, yeah.
A similar, okay.
Yeah.
I remember that line and thinking, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, the prologue's so good, but that line hooks you because you think, oh, here we go.
She knows them, yeah. And so that's what it was called, but they changed it to One Good Lie.
Which is also brilliant. So I think either way, maybe you could save It Was You for another one.
Yeah, who knows?
So you do write full time now. How long have you been writing full time for?
Well, I used to balance my writing with a part-time job. I used to work as a buyer for an engineering company, and so I do that in the daytime, sort of around school hours, fitting around my daughter, and then I would write in the evenings. But when I got to book 5, I was just really struggling. I felt that I was just, I wasn't spending enough time with my family, to be fair, because I was trying to juggle my part-time job, day job, my part-time writing job, and my family. So to be fair to my family and my daughter as well, because I think she was about 14 then, and I knew she always wanted to go to university, so I only had a few more years with her. Yeah. I decided that I would write full time, so that I could spend more time with her really while she was at home, and I've just continued doing it. She went to uni year before last, but I've just continued writing full time.
And it's clearly working for you.
Well, at the moment, yeah. I mean, you're only as good as your last book, so who knows?
We've got another question from Sandra. How do you make characters that readers care about? Because you really do. You really kind of get attached to your characters, and you really want to see what's going to happen and how they're going to resolve this situation. And you're kicking yourself in parts with Ruby and Sophie because you think, and I'm going to be very careful, you think, you're smarter than this. You are so smarter than this. How have you got into a situation? And things progress, and you're just wondering how they're going to get back out of it, but you're so invested in them.
And that's so important, I think. I mean, there are times when you know, as a writer, you don't feel, if you don't feel invested in your characters, your readers definitely won't. So it's layers, really. I think it's giving them, like I always do. I spend a lot of time getting to know my characters, so that they feel real to me, and I do a potted history on them. I write all the background down, how many relationships they've had, all that kind of thing, and brothers, sisters, what they like to eat. And none of that probably hardly ever appears in the book, but it just helps me to get to know them really well. And I think by then I either really like them or I really dislike them. But whatever happens, because I have written some parts in some books through the eyes of killers, and obviously I'm quite abhorred by some of those. But I know them really well by then. I feel like I know them really well, which I hopefully comes across on the page. That's the idea.
I think it does. I feel like I know Ruby and Sophie quite well.
Good.
So, which is obviously the goal.
Yes.
You're writing so many different things. There's 3 series. There's a standalone you're working on. You've just finished another standalone. How do you keep track of different things throughout the book? Kaz used to like to ask if you have like a character Bible, just to make sure that you get eye colour, hair colour, height, siblings, all of the food, even all of the things that you might mention. do you have a record keeping?
Well, I think when I was writing, that was all I was writing, so I remembered everything. But then when I went to write the Will Jackman books, I sort of came away from that, and I got immersed in him, and then I got immersed in Beth, so it was fine. But when I went back to write the Helen books again, I had to go back and read the first 2 books in her series, and I had to start writing things down and doing a Bible then, just so like you said, so that I didn't get something wrong and I didn't make a mistake with somebody. I mean, I remember in I think it was A Deathly Silence, I remember putting Helen's youngest son down and thinking, gosh, is he really that age? Or have I got that right? Or is he a year younger than that? You know, that sort of thing, you know, and I really had to go back to my Bible and make sure that I got their hair colour right and all that sort of thing. And they're only very small periphery characters. But yes, I do have a Bible for each of my series, very much so. I think it's really important. I mean, when you're writing a standalone, you can change somebody's eye colour throughout the book. Not by trying, do you know what I mean? Yeah. You can make mistakes like that, so it's even more.
One of the things that I love to ask, because we always get varied answers, is memorable moments for you as an author. I think you must have quite a few good ones with 10 books.
I think I've had lots of lovely experiences. I've been so lucky. But I think probably the one that really stands out for me was with my first book, when I submitted it to a very small publishing house called Creme de la Crime. A bit cheesy.
I love that.
I know. And they came back to me fairly quickly and said that they couldn't read my submission because they'd just been taken over by a large publisher. But they gave me the details of a couple of literary agents. So I thought I got nothing to lose, and I sent it off to these literary agents. And when they came back to me, and one of them asked me to go and meet them in their Kensington offices. And I've got to say, if nothing else happened in my writing career, it was one of the most memorable days I had, because I didn't know whether I'd ever get a contract. I didn't know whether I'd ever be published or anything. And my husband took the day off work, because we still get very excited about going to London for the day. So he took the day off work, and we were going to go for dinner afterwards. And I went for my meeting with this agent, and their meeting rooms at their Kensington offices were lined with floor-to-ceiling bookcases all the way around. And in those bookcases were books from authors that they'd represented. And there was Sean Connery's autobiography in there. There was Evan Davis from Radio 4. Ellie Griffiths was in there. I mean, it was amazing. And in the middle of the room was an oak square coffee table with a glass top. And sitting on that coffee table was my manuscript printed out. Now, I'd never printed my manuscript out. I'd only ever seen chunks of it on a computer screen. So it was such an exciting moment for me. Excuse me. And my husband was waiting for me outside afterwards. And I went outside, and he was like, well, how did it go? How did the meeting go? And I said, let's walk around the corner. So we walked around the corner, and I went, it was great. So needless to say, I signed with the agent, but it was such a lovely day to have somebody be so nice and kind about your work and recognise what you're trying to do. I just felt like I was walking on air. It was lovely.
Tony Millington has asked, are the parts of Northamptonshire you want to include in a book but haven't got round to? He lives in Peterborough, so he knows Northants.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I've written the Beth series is all Northamptonshire, all 3 books in the Beth series. So there's loads of Northamptonshire in the Beth series. Are there parts? I haven't used Althorpe, which would be nice. There's lots of beautiful parts that I haven't used yet. And if I go on to write any more Beth books, which I might, I'd certainly look at different locations. But there is quite a lot of Northamptonshire in those books.
Leslie Lloyd has asked, who is your favourite character? That's an interesting question with so many to choose from.
Oh gosh, that's like choosing your favourite child. It's so hard. That's really difficult. I mean, I love them all. That's the trouble. I suppose the most challenging was Will Jackman. And because he was the most challenging, I'll always be very proud of him. Because people seem to really enjoy him. And I was still not sure until that first book came out whether I'd got him right. So I suppose I'll always be proud. But I love them all. And I know that you shouldn't say that because it sounds big-headed, and I don't mean to sound big-headed, but if I didn't like them, my readers wouldn't like them, would they?
No, it's a good answer. Kaz likes to ask about spin-off novellas. Are there any characters that you think there's maybe not enough to do a whole series or a whole book on, but you'd like to explore their backstory a bit more?
That's an interesting question, Kaz. It's something I've never really thought about, to be honest.
She's
I've always
quite
written
a few novellas with this question, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've always written full-length novels. I started off writing short stories, and then I decided to write a novel. And since then, I've nearly always written. I don't write very many short stories at all. In fact, I find short stories really difficult to write because I'm in the mode of writing a full-length novel. And I think I'll probably find novellas quite difficult because they're probably 30 to 40,000 words. That would be quite tricky. So, gosh, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Food for thought.
You'll have to have a think about that and come back to us.
Yeah.
How about the I've completely lost my train of thought because I've just realised that somebody can't hear us.
Oh, bless them.
The subtitles, Charlotte. Sorry, Charlotte. Subtitles I can only ever usually get on my phone, but they will be up on YouTube. So I'll send Charlotte a message if one of the admins doesn't beat me to it, just to say that when it comes up on YouTube, it does generally have the Oh, somebody said if you put the mute on, that's really helpful. Thank you, Facebook user. Let's have a look. And that was Leslie. Thanks, Leslie. So apparently if you mute it, you'll get the subtitles, Charlotte.
Oh, that's
Although
helpful.
you can't hear this, so Leslie's comment is far more useful than me waffling. You should know this as somebody who's losing the hearing, that you can't...
Oh
no, it's fine. We'll talk about that afterwards.
Okay.
So we've actually only got 2 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to show us some book covers? Show as many as you want and just tell people what
to
go and buy.
Okay, so my first book was An Unfamiliar Murder. I mean, all my books are available on Amazon. Most of them are in libraries. If you want to go and borrow it from the library, it's absolutely fine. You can, if they're not on the shelf in the bookshop, you should be able to order most of them as well. So that was the first one. The second one in the DCI Helen Lavery series was The Truth Will Out, which is second edition. The first one was A Woman Walking Through Woods, would you believe?
It's another cover that's so simple but so effective.
I know, but Walking Through Woods was the first one, which is so different. So, and the third one in the Helen Lavery series, and the one that I'm happy to give away if somebody wants to put a comment down, is A Deathly Silence. But the Helen Lavery series are written as standalone novels, so they can be read in any order. With my Beth Chamberlain series, I initially decided to self-publish these, and then a publisher came along and bought them. So they ended up being reproduced. So they named the first one The Other Woman. It doesn't look like a crime novel to me. And For Better For Worse is the second one, which is a serial killer thriller. And that doesn't look like a serial killer thriller, does it really? But it is. And this is the concrete one, Hush Little Baby.
Right, okay.
And then my Jackman series, I don't know if we've got time, is Before It's Too Late, Beneath the Ashes, and The Lies Within, which is probably one of my favourite books because it's part courtroom drama, part police procedural. And so I was doing something a bit different there. And I don't know why. I feel particularly proud of it because I was doing something different. And then, of course, One Good Lie, my latest one. So there we are.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for everybody else that joined us and for all your lovely questions. It's been great answering them.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all the members and admins as well. And we will let you know who the winner of the paperback is.
We will. So
thank you. Jane will go and choose. Thank you so much for joining us. That's been a brilliant hour.
Thanks ever so much. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks.